Our next guest is probably best known as one of Ireland's foremost movie directors, the man behind titles such as Interview with the Vampire, The Crying Game, Michael Collins, The Company of Wolves and Mona Lisa. Neil Jordan, however, has also enjoyed a long and successful career as a writer, predating his directing days, with titles including The Drowned Detective, Mistaken and Night in Tunisia. His latest novel, Carnivalesque, a dark coming-of-age tale set in a supernatural circus, is out now. Neil Jordan, you are very welcome to the Art Show. Carnivalesque, where did that idea come from?
For a long time I've been thinking of making a movie about a carnival or a circus that had supernatural abilities, yeah? So they actually had to hide their physical kind of talents. They had to hide the fact that they didn't have to obey physical laws, you know, and I was wondering, were these people from space, or where were they from, or were they from another planet, or, you know, that kind of thing, and so I just began to write the story. You know, I've always wanted to write a piece of total fantasy, you know, set in, you know, in an Irish context, and in the context of the spooky stories my father used to tell me.
But that idea of the pukas and the banshees...
Yeah, the idea of actually a race of people that took advantage of all these bloody legends, you know what I mean? The more I explored it, the more, you know, the more complicated and the more interesting it became, really.
So why is... Because you've almost got like a dual life. You're Neil Jordan, the fiction writer, and you're also Neil Jordan, the screenwriter and director. Do you see them as a dual identity, or are you...
No, I don't. They're both... I mean, I don't know how... if you do the kind of thing I do, it's silly not to do something else. It's just... A lot of film directors work in the theatre, you know, and a lot of film directors like Martin Scorsese does magnificent documentary work and stuff like that. It just happens. I come from Ireland and I come from a literary tradition and background, and that's what I started doing, you know.
So do you see a difference in the two roles, or do you see yourself
as a filmmaker
and a novelist, or are you a storyteller first and foremost?
I don't really. I mean, it's just because I never thought I would get to make films, you know what I mean? Well, if you think back to the 70s, I mean, Irish people didn't make movies, you know. They just didn't. There was no Irish cinema. And it was only when I started to write movies, and when I met John Borman, actually, and began to work with him on Excalibur and another script or two that we wrote together, that I began to see that it's possible for someone like me to perhaps do this kind of thing, you know.
Jordan began his directing career on the self-penned Angel in 1982, a story about a musician played by a young Stephen Rea who witnesses a murder and tracks down the killers. So Angel comes along then, and you've written it.
Well, I wrote Angel. Yeah, I wrote the script for Angel, and for some reason they let me direct that movie. It was a kind of a terrifying experience, but I had a great cameraman, Chris Menges, and I hadn't got a clue about how cameras worked or anything like that. You know what I mean? But I had a very clear vision in my mind about what I wanted to see. I just wanted to present these series of murders and killings and the horrible attraction of that kind of thing in the barest, without any explanations whatsoever, you know. And so, you know, I made this rather strange and spare movie, and people liked it, you know, and it got, you know, quite a bit of acclaim. And
was that the first time that you had worked with Stephen Rea?
Yeah, it was, yeah. I'd seen Stephen in the Abbey in a play that was actually directed by Jim Sheridan called The Blue McCushla, written by Tom Murphy. And he was really cool, and I thought, this guy's good, you know. And so when I did Angel, I asked him to act in it, and, you know, we developed a relationship out of that.
This relationship would continue with one of Jordan's biggest international successes, The Crying Game, for which he won the Oscar for Best Screenplay in 1992. It's recently celebrated its 25th year. I mean, does that surprise you that it still stands the test of time?
I rarely watch the films that I do, but BFI brought out a beautifully restored version of it. Actually, I watched it in the BFI, and it was cool. It was really good, you know. And it stood up. It stood the test of time. Except there's far more awareness now of gender issues and transgender stuff.
Yeah. The success of The Crying Game led to Jordan being offered one of the biggest directing gigs in Hollywood at the time, the movie adaptation of Anne Rice's novel Interview with the Vampire, starring Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise. Were you making it for a market? I mean, did you suddenly find
No,
yourself...
I was making it for my friends. I said, I'll make it if you allow me to make it as an independent movie. And they said yes, you know, so I said, okay, I'll do that then, you know. And so it was a big, huge, like, what, $70 million movie, but there was no interference whatsoever, you know. It was extraordinary, actually.
Particularly with the stars that they're giving you.
Yeah,
I mean, they're handing you Tom Cruise, or are they handing you Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt, or are you still having to say, look, I want them to audition for these roles?
Oh no, oh, you don't ask Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt to audition for roles. No, you don't. Maybe if you're Stanley Kubrick you do, or you did, but no. No, Tom expressed interest in the role. I went out to meet him. I mean, Brad was attached. At the time, they wanted Daniel Day-Lewis to play Tom Cruise's role. And I said, look, there's no way Mr. Daniel's going to play this role, because he would never survive 6 months in a coffin anyway, because that's what he does, you know.
Method acting.
But I went to meet Tom, and I thought he's got a really interesting character for this. He's got a really interesting quality, you know, and the description, the kind of character description that Anne Rice had given of Lestat was almost like a description of a star, you know, who is at a certain remove from life and stuff like that. And I just thought Tom, I've always liked him as an actor, you know, and I thought he'd be great, you know. But I was dealing with Tom and Brad, and that was, you know, they were kind of interesting. That was interesting. But I was let make the movie I wanted to make.
The global success of the movie empowered Jordan to follow it up with a long-cherished personal project, his self-penned biopic of Michael Collins, starring Liam Neeson. Other major talent he's directed include Robert De Niro and Sean Penn and Cillian Murphy. He's recently branched into long-form, big-budget TV drama with yet another self-penned project, The Borgias, starring Jeremy Irons. Does it rankle with you that Neil Jordan, the novelist, never gets as big a profile as Neil Jordan, the film director?
It's something I don't fully understand. It's you know, people just are surprised that I ever wrote novels, you know. It's just the way things are. Nothing I can do about it, you know.